Phil Lowe. I'm a cabinet maker here in Beverly, Mass, on the North Shore of Boston, where I specialize in reproduction furniture, especially in the Queen Anne and Chippendale style. What I'm working on here is a cabriole leg that terminates in a ball and claw foot. This is a solid piece of mahogany, and it's made up of a post block, a knee, an ankle, and a foot. The post block has two mortises. The tenon on the end of this rail fits into this mortise. This rail happens to be a model, but if it were the real thing, it would have a tenon on this end that would fit into a post block and would continue around back into this post block. This is going to be a footstool. I would cut a rabbet in the top edge of this rail in order to accept a slip seat. If you look at this area here, you'll see that the inside line of the leg stops rather abruptly. The solution for that is a transition piece. The transition piece is glued to the underside of the rail into the inside surface of the leg. Now you see that the vertical line of the leg travels up into the OG and then into the horizontal of the rail. The cabriole leg was a popular form in the 18th century. The word cabriole came from the word capra, meaning goat's leg. It was an animal form. As you can see here, pretty much looks like an animal's leg of some sort. The early Chinese probably were the ones that originated this design. They had the cabriole leg, usually terminating in a ball and claw foot, but they referred to it as dragon's claw holding the pearl of price. In America, the ball and claws took on many forms, each one associated with a different region. Let me get these tools out of the way so you can get a better look at them. These are the three that I work with the most: the Newport, the Boston, and the Philadelphia. If you look at all three of them now, you'll see that each one of them has something in common: a central ball and four claws. If we look a little closer, we'll start to see the characteristic differences. If we look at the Philadelphia, we see that it has sharp, bold knuckles and a short, stout talon. The Boston has much subtler knuckles, a bulbous knuckle, and a thin, long talon. The Newport has four evenly sized knuckles, a long, thin talon, which is undercut. Now, if we look at these from the side view, the Philadelphia and the Newport have claws that come straight down. The Boston has a claw that is swept back, which gives it a more dynamic stance. Let's look at the webs. On the Philadelphia, you'll see that the webs are carved quite deeply, giving these tendons a very pronounced look. On the Boston, the web is carved much shallower and makes it look much more delicate, especially in through this area. In the Newport, the web is undercut, which is a major difference. Up in the ankle, this area is carved flat, which make these tendons thin and tense looking. Let's take a look at the back of these. In the Philadelphia, you find there isn't very much going on. A little bit of undercutting where the web meets the ball. The Boston is about the same. Again, not much going on. The tendons are not very well defined. But in the Newport, you find very spacious undercutting with quite a bit of relief that make the tendons quite sinewy. I developed these models from the three pieces of furniture at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, two of which were a highboy. The Boston was a chair. I took photographs from three different views on each one of these pieces. One from the side view, one from the front view, and one from a diagonal view. And then I developed three different drawings, from which I developed three different patterns. The pattern for the Newport, pattern for the Boston, and a pattern for the Philadelphia. You can see that the Philadelphia and the Newport are pretty much the same, but the Boston here has this little cutback in there. I do that so that when I bandsaw this out, I don't have to do quite so much carving on the Boston. Now, a Newport cabinet maker didn't know that this was a Newport ball and claw foot. All he knew was that it was a ball and claw foot. The reason for that was he learned how to carve this particular ball and claw foot from his master, and this was the only style or the only ball and claw foot that he learned how to carve. There wasn't really that much communication between the regions, so he wasn't aware of the other regions, say the Boston and the Philadelphia. All he knew was that this was a ball and claw foot. Now, there were variations among regions. A cabinet maker on the outskirts of Philadelphia, for instance, would come into Philadelphia proper, and he would see or want to check out the styles that he would see in Philadelphia. And he would see this ball and claw foot, and he would try and copy this ball and claw foot. When he went back to his shop, he'd be more or less successful, and in so doing, he would be copying the Philadelphia style. Now, what does all this mean? If we were trying to reproduce an 18th century piece of furniture, we'd want to be aware of the regional styles. If this was a Newport highboy, and we were carving a Newport ball and claw foot, we'd want to make sure that we took in the regional characteristics of the undercutting of the web and the undercutting of the talons. If we were working on a Boston chair, we'd want to be aware of this swept back claw. Say if this was a Philadelphia footstool, and we were carving this ball and claw foot, we'd want to be sure that the footstool would be true to the Philadelphia style. Of the three of these, the Newport is definitely the most challenging. To do the undercutting of this web and the undercutting of these talons are quite difficult, especially these talons. You really have to be careful not to break these off when you're doing the undercutting. The Boston piece is a bit simpler. It has its tricky parts, though. This swept back claw creates a little bit of difficulty because we have to alter the shape of the block before we start to carve. The Philadelphia is the simplest of all. It's bold, and it's blocky, and it's closer to the original bandsawn shape. If I were carving a ball and claw foot for the first time, I'd try the Philadelphia. So why don't we go on up to my drafting room, and I'll show you how I go about designing one of these. What I've just finished doing here is drawing a rectangle for the cabriole leg and a ball and claw foot. In order to give this some context, what you see here is the makings of a simple footstool. When I draw any piece of furniture, the first thing I do is draw a base line, then I go up to the height of the stool, and in this instance it's 17 inches, and draw this horizontal line. Then I would indicate the size of the rectangle in which I will design the cabriole leg at 2 3/4, so that I might be able to get it out of 12/4 stock. Once I have that completed, I would draw in the horizontal line for the rail, which is 2 3/4 inches, and then I would draw in the post block, which is this rectangle that you see here. This distance is 2 3/4 to conform to the 2 3/4 inches of the rail. This post block is 1 3/4. This dimension accommodates the mortise and tenon joinery between the post block and the rails. In the plan view, this rectangle that you see here represents the actual size of the seat. If you look at these center lines here, this one marks side view, indicates half of this long distance. The center line end view indicates half of this short distance. When it's done, it's going to look something like this. This is a Queen Anne stool with a cabriole leg. It has some of the same components of the footstool that we're drawing. It has a post block, a knee, an ankle, and a spoon foot. You'll notice that this is a spoon foot instead of a ball and claw foot, and also we don't have the shell carving on the knee. You'll also see that this footstool has stretchers, and we've drawn this other footstool without, but basically it's the same. It has a slip seat. This seat fits into a rabbet. It travels all the way around the stool. The post block comes right through the top of the stool, and the rails fasten into the post block. It also has transition pieces that's secure to the underside of the rail and to the inside surface of the leg. A footstool is a very good project for a beginner. It's basically 4 legs, 4 rails, the hardest part being the cabriole leg. Of course, the ball and claw foot is going to be much more challenging than the spoon foot. So why don't we go back to the drawing and finish drawing the leg. Back to the designing of this leg, and we'll see where we left off. What I'm going to do now is draw a 60-degree line from the corner of the post block down to the outside of the leg. The reason why I'm doing that is to give myself somewhat of a reference line to draw the curvature of the knee. If I draw the knee a little bit sharper than that, say using a 45-degree angle, it would create a shelf, and you wouldn't have a smooth transition down into around the knee and down into the leg. So I'll just sketch in the knee here, and then we'll go on to the designing of the ball and claw foot. What we need first of all is a compass to start off with. The ball, we have to think about, is going to be the same size as the size of the block that we have, which is 2 3/4. So we need to set up our compass to a 1 3/8 radius. Then we'll need to find the center of the rectangle and draw a vertical line so that we can position our compass point on that line. Now, usually a ball and claw foot will have a flattened portion on the bottom, and we have to take that into consideration. I could draw the ball touching the bottom or the floor line, but that would give us too much of a curve down at the bottom here. So what we'll do is we'll move that down just slightly, and we'll get the ball will actually be flattened off then. So that's the size of the ball that we'll end up with. You can see that this flattened portion of the ball, I can show you that in the model here. You can see the model has been flattened off on the bottom. We've drawn the same thing on our plan. Okay, why don't we go ahead and design the plan view of the talons so we can see the proper positioning of the talons now. First of all, what we want to do is to draw a square the size of the rectangle. Draw a right angle, a 45-degree angle. Get our measurement of the block that we've drawn over here, which is 2 3/4. Bring a horizontal line across. Where it intersects with the diagonal line, we can drop down a perpendicular line. Now what we need to do is to draw another diagonal line, and with our compass, scribe a circle. Now, what we have to do is draw the size of the claws. If the claws are approximately a 1/2 inch in width, what we should do is split a 1/2 inch to either side of these diagonals. And at each 1/4 inch mark, we'll draw diagonal lines that attach to the ball. We'll do that again. Split the 1/2 inch mark and draw the diagonals. Now you can see that the four claws are oriented into the four corners of the square. They fit in nicely into these corners. That way you actually have very little waste removed. Now we want to go over to the ball over here. And we'll start drawing in the claws here. They're just indicated by straight lines. Just giving it enough to indicate where each knuckle would be. Each one of these sharp points is where the knuckle may fall. And then we want to bring this line, curve it up into where the ankle would be. The ankle is approximately 1 1/8 inches in section. If we make it any larger than that, it starts to look too bulky. If we make it any thinner than that, it looks a little too spindly. So what we need to do is just make that about 1 1/8 inches. That works pretty well for chairs, coffee tables, footstools, and so on. What we need to do now is to draw a straight line between the lower knee and the upper portion of the ankle. The reason why we bring this line down straight and we don't put too much of a curve into this is to hold back on the curvature of the knee. If we take a look at the sample that we have here and we look at it straight on in a plane parallel to this surface, it has a straight line running on both sides of the leg. But if we rotate this model so that you're looking at it at a diagonal to that plane, you'll see that this curve is actually accentuated. That's the reason why we have to use restraint when we draw this curve on your leg here. What we need to do now, I'm choosing a point on the inside surface of the leg so that the transition piece may come down and hit this point, and then the curve will turn a slight curve on the inside here and then carry it down straight to meet the ankle at the lower section. This curve at the top gives some thinness to the knee through here, otherwise it would look much too bulky. So we establish that line and then connect them with a straight line. Now what we want to do is go on to the transition piece. The transition piece is going to be, its function is to take this vertical line and bring it up and transfer it into this horizontal rail. So what we want to do is to draw a slight OG curve. OG curve meaning S shape, and then we'll bring that right into where the knee, back portion of the knee. We'll darken that in a little bit so that we can put a pattern on, some pattern stock underneath there and be able to stipple the pattern. Now that doesn't look so bad. That looks pretty good if I do say so myself. Have a nice smooth flowing line with a fairly simple ball and claw foot on the end of it. You can see that we've completed the drawing. We put in a couple of broken lines, and if you look at the post block you can see the completion of the joinery. What we need to do now is to make a pattern of this leg. I have some pattern stock here. It's just a thin piece of 1/8 inch plywood. What I normally do is slide it underneath the paper and get it fairly close to the edge so that we don't waste too much. You can actually feel the edge of the stock underneath there. I don't like to have it right to the edge though, because when I take my stippling tool, this stippling tool is nothing but a dowel with a pin in the end of it that's bound with some twine. Usually on straight lines what I do is just put 2 or 3 pinholes, and if I come to a curve I put them about every 1/4 of an inch or so. And if you have straight lines again where the knuckles are, just jump right down to those straight portions. Maybe put 1 or 2 in between so you know where to connect the straight lines. Go right up into the transition piece. I think what we need to do is I'm going to shift this over a little bit and stipple the transition piece also. Got a couple of straight lines there. And I'll do the curves. Now what I need to do is go over all these straight lines and connect them with a straight edge. We'll do the front portion of the leg first. We'll do the back. And I guess that's all of our straights. Now what we'd want to do is to draw in the curves. Why don't we do the transition piece first of all. This is just like, this reminds me of when I was a kid and I was given these books that you go from dot A to dot B. That's what it always reminds me of. Just like joining the dots. Till eventually we come up with the shape that we want. Just finish off the top of the knee. That'll complete the pattern. Now what I'll do is I'll take this down to the shop, to the machine room, where I'll show you how I bandsaw the stock. I placed a jigsaw pattern on a block of mahogany, which I've machined to 2 3/4 inches square and exactly 17 inches long. I'm careful to position the post block flush along a square corner. This ensures that the frame will be square. Position the pattern on the adjacent surface, placing the post block against the same square corner, and trace out the leg. At the bandsaw, the first thing I do is to lay out a couple of bridges. Their function will be apparent in a moment. You'll notice I bored the mortises with a hollow chisel mortiser. Now I'll make a couple of relief cuts at the top bridge where the post block meets the knee, and at the lower bridge that's halfway down the leg. Now we can proceed to cut the profile on the first surface. Now make your cut from the upper portion of the knee into the relief cut. That way we don't have to bend the blade around the corner to go up into the post block. Now make an angular cut down towards the relief cut at the top bridge. And come back in from the other direction. And stay a 1/16 of an inch away from the line on this cut. This ensures that you are able to fare the post block down to the rails instead of the rails to the post block. This cut leaves the bridge exposed halfway down the middle of the leg. Now cut the angle for the knuckles on the claws and the lower angle for the talon. This piece needs to be saved. It has a bit of the pattern scribed on it. This upper piece also has a majority of the pattern scribed on it, so it also needs to be saved. Now take these pieces and place them back on the block and tape them in position. You can see that I've already taped the lower piece onto the foot. The only thing that I have to do now, before bandsawing the second profile, is to pencil in the lines that the tape obscures and where the bandsaw has sawn them away. Now, one relief cut is all that's necessary here, where the post block meets the knee. Again, cut the post block a 1/16 of an inch away from the line. Now you can see what the bridges do for the leg. The bridges support the leg as if it were still square. As I move the blank around through the second profile, the leg is always supported by at least 2 points. If it weren't for the bridges, the leg would tend to rock on the knee. This causes 2 problems. A cut that would be produced that wouldn't be at the correct angle, and also a dangerous situation. My saw table is relatively large. Bridges could be even more of a help on a smaller table, and they're pretty quick to produce also. You can see that this is a pretty tight curve that I'm trying to saw now. So I make a couple of passes to widen the curve. Now this completes the sawing. Remove the patterns and saw off the bridges. It doesn't take long to transform this rectangular block into a cabriole leg that's ready for spoke shaving and carving up in my bench room. The first thing that we need to do at the bench is to spoke shave these band-sawn surfaces. Make sure that we get rid of any bumps that might be on there. Don't want that one right there. Get in as close to the ankle as possible. Remove any little ridge that you might have at the knee. Then we want to go down and do the bottom of the ball and claw. Now what we want to do is spoke shave the knee. Spoke shave's working pretty well. Okay, now we'll go down to the foot area again. Get the top of the ball. Once we have that smooth, we'll rotate it in the clamp here. We'll go ahead and proceed to smooth this flat surface again. Notice that I'm holding the spoke shave on a bit of a skew. It tends to cut a little bit better. Okay, let's see, there's a nice little bump there. That's where the bandsaw runs out. Usually you get a little lump. We'll go down to the foot area. And we'll go up to the knee. And down to the top of the foot. Okay, that's about complete. Now if we, when we go to position the leg, if we look at this line, we can tell whether there is any bumps or hollows in it by the straightness of this line. You can look at it along from the knee down to the foot, and also along the horizontal like so. That way we can see whether there is any drastic bumps or hollows in there. Now we can reposition it into the clamp so that we can get the back of the leg. We won't be able to get very close to the knee area here. That one's all done now, and we'll finish up on this final surface. Mind if I get a piece of wax here? Usually I apply a little bit of wax to the bottom of the spoke shave. That way it'll glide a little bit smoother. We got quite a bump right in this area. Get rid of that first. Now the holding of this spoke shave is probably quite important. You'll notice on the top of this we have two flats. That's where your thumbs go. And you want to make sure that you try and keep this flat as flat as possible on these curved surfaces. So otherwise you'll get chattering. Okay, since I'm working on a footstool here, what I would normally do is go ahead and spoke shave all the surfaces on all these legs. But for the case of this videotape, what I'm going to do is just carry one leg all the way through. Our next procedure is to go ahead and do some rasping and filing in through these areas here. So we'll get rid of this spoke shave, and we'll take out my rasp and file. This is a number 49 Nicholson rasp. It's round on one side and flat on the other, and tapered at the end. The number 27 Nicholson file is also round on one side and flat on the other, and it also has a taper on one end. Now if we look at the tops of these, each one of the files has a handle. They're rosewood handles, but that's not for decoration. It's for safety, just to protect myself from getting stabbed by the tang. So why don't we go ahead and rasp this area. You just want to try and remove any of the bandsaw marks and fare it into the leg. This curve into the lower part of the leg here. Once we've completed that, we want to file it and just remove some of those coarser rasp marks. Now we'll go on to another surface. Really doesn't take too much. When I rasp and file this surface, it's not necessary to go right up to this edge, because the transition piece is going to be fastened to the inside leg, and we'll have to fare both of those surfaces together later on. Sometimes it requires a little bit more rasping, because if you have a little bit of a waver with the bandsaw, it makes a little bit deeper cut, so you have to remove a bit more stock. That's what's nice about this taper, because you can use that right inside. The wide part would hold it away, but the taper fits right down inside there. Finish it up with the file. Changing in our clamp again. This time we want the ball and claw foot, or the foot down at the end. That way we can file down the grain or down the slope. If we tried filing up the slope, we'd have a tendency to tear out. File it again. Turn it in the clamp. Rasp again. Get rid of all those bandsaw marks. file again. There, now we're ready for layout. It's just a final check to make sure our lines are fair and these surfaces are flat. We'll put away our files now, and then we'll get our layout tools, a steel ruler and a compass. What we need to do now is to draw a diagonal line from this point to that point. Between the corners of these squares. Now at this point of intersection, we should take the point of the compass and extend the leg out to the edge of the square and then scribe a circle. Try to get this good and dark so you can see it. There. Now what I need to do is split this diagonal line and put 1/4 inch to either side of it. These will be the width of the claws. And if you remember, this looks exactly like the plan view that we did in the drawing room. It just gives you a rough width of the claws so that we don't make them too small when we start to carve them. Doesn't have to be anything that accurate. Now what we need to do is to draw the claws and where the webbing might stop at the top. Just some rough lines, just so that we can get an idea of how large the claws are going to be and give us plenty to trim down later on so we don't remove too much. We'll go through a roughing out process first. Now I don't use a template at all. Just sketch them in freehand. Just a little rough guide is all it is. Doesn't have to be anything extremely accurate. Good. Now we're ready for carving. Let me put my layout tools away. Now get my carving tools. Let's see. We're going to need a straight chisel, a straight gouge, a bent gouge, a spoon gouge, a back bend, and 2 more straight gouges. I'll be telling you a little more about these as I use them. But for now, let's talk about these two. You see a number 5 on here. That indicates the sweep, which is the curvature of the blade. You see 2 different widths. One's a 10 and one's a 20 millimeter. So if I refer to a number 20 millimeter, you'll know I'm referring to the width and not the sweep. Let me put these aside and we'll start to carve. We'll start off with the number 5, 20 millimeter. First thing that I'm going to do is rough out the ball. It's necessary to make the first cut on a perpendicular to what will be the ball, which you see is this contour here. I want to be 90 degrees to wherever that ball might be. I don't want to be cutting in perpendicular to this surface because I'd undercut the claws. So I'll go ahead and set in along this line. We'll just follow the layout lines. And that is the first procedure by setting in. Now what I need to do is try and think about a cylinder. What I'm going to do is try and form a complete cylinder, which will be the beginning of the ball. The first stroke that I need to do is just run the carving tool right down the center of the ball and try to get the curvature of the carving tool. Now what we want to do is follow that curvature right around. Remove some of this waste stock. You can see that this kind of forms to the curvature of the ball now. Do that on the other side. And what we've actually done is form one part of a cylinder. Get a little bit of a grain direction, a change of grain there, so we'll move over to the other side. Again, you can see we get a much smoother cut now. You can see how that's conforming to the curvature of the tool. Clean that up a little bit this way. Get rid of some of that ragged edge. All right, now what we need to do is to knock off the ends of the cylinder. We're actually going to shave them on an angle. And I'm going to carve right down to that compass line on each side. Don't need to try and do any curving of it yet. We just want to get to the compass line. So what we actually have is a cylinder with two angled ends. And we'll do that up near the web. We'll just go in straight this way. Putting quite a bit of pressure on the tool at this point, just to remove quite a bit of stock. This number 5 fits the curvature of the ball perfectly. If I brought this up to the drawing room and put it on the circle that we had drawn for the bottom of the foot, I would just go right around the outside edge of that ball, and this curve would form exactly to the curvature of the ball that I had drawn. Now that we have a cylinder with two ends that have been angled off, we want to take off these sharp edges. We can start to round that off. Get rid of that sharp edge that we have left. Shift around the other side here and get rid of this line. Okay, we'll take our number 5, 10 millimeter. Just clean up along this web area a little bit. Okay, we'll switch back to the larger number 5. Clean up the claws a little bit. Isn't necessary to get them perfect, but we might want to work down to those 2 half-inch lines that we had put on the bottom. Okay, that's pretty much the first roughing out stage of the ball. Why don't we go on to the next surface? And we'll clean up the talons or the claws a little bit into the talon area here. That's enough for roughing right at this moment. You can see now that the balls are pretty similar. We'll fine-tune that a little bit later. Why don't we go on to this back surface now? We need to set in, again, perpendicular to what would be the ball. Make our initial cut. I'll be doing the same thing on that last surface, the fourth surface, that I do on this ball. The only real difference that we have on this one is that you have to be careful not to get some tough grain here. Have to be careful not to send your chisel up through this claw area. Go up into the web. We'll just make it curve up into the web here now. Nice thing about making a ball, if you run into a bit of grain direction on your cylinder, when we start to curve it, you don't have to really contend with the grain, only at the very top of the ball, because you're always carving downhill on both ends of the ball. So grain direction is really not too much of a matter here. Cut right down to the compass line that we scribed on the bottom. Knock off our sharp edges. And we have a rough cut ball on the back side now. Clean up these surfaces just slightly. The ball takes shape pretty quickly. You can see that it's really not too far from the original shape of the block of wood that we had band sawn out. A little bit more on this side. I think I'll need my number 5, 10 millimeter to get into this web area. Just clean it up a little bit. Okay, I'll do the same thing to the last surface over here. There, the fourth side's done. Now what we can do is take a look at the ball. The ball's all been roughed out now, as you can see. Looks pretty good. You might want to check the height of the ball. Make sure they're approximately the same distance up. It isn't absolutely necessary at this point. We'll do some fine-tuning a little bit later. Next thing we want to do is we're going to rough out the web area here. We'll change our tool. What we need is a number 8. The number 8 meaning that it has a little bit more sweep than the number 5. We're going to have to use quite a bit of pressure in order to remove this, because this area is all end grain. The reason why I'm using a number 8 is because I can remove quite a bit of stock in a fast amount of time. And if you want to try and carve these efficiently, you need to remove stock quickly. All right, you'll see down at this area we have some chattering that takes place. You hear that? What's creating that is the back of the tool is heating up at this point, and we don't get a smooth transition into the ankle. Listen. The solution for that is changing of a tool. What I have is a spoon gouge, a number 9, which is a 10 millimeter in width. Now you'll see the shape of this. It allows me to make my cut without it, the back edge of the tool heating up in this area. Sounds much nicer. You can make a nice transition up into the ankle now. All right, why don't we change positions and go on to the next one. Again, we'll start with the number 8, straight gouge. We use a straight gouge for this part because the straightness of the tool, we can get a much more force applied than if we tried to use a spoon gouge or a bent gouge. Again, the chattering. We'll change our tool. Certainly sounds much nicer than that chattering. Huh? Alrighty, we'll go on to the back side now. The reason we need to do that is what we're going to do is try and create a little bit of a tendon up in the back side here. So we'll scoop out this area with a fairly flat straight gouge. I think I'll try the number 5 straight gouge. I think we're familiar with that one, so I really don't have too much to say about that. We'll just bring that right down into the ball. Now what I try to think about when I create these webs and things is if I can't have a really, accurate picture of what I'm doing, I might look at my hand and just look at the anatomy of my hand and think about the bones and the knuckles inside there, this loose skin which might represent the web of a ball and claw, and if you get the tendons that run up through the back of your hands, if you you try to visualize these. If I have some problems visualizing these, what I usually do is I take an orange and I grab a hold of it. And, if I grab a hold of this thing, it gives me somewhat a clearer picture of what actually has taken place. You can see how the knuckles are forming, or the claws would be forming around the ball in all 3 places, and then one grabbing it in behind. And how this loose skin is kind of flabby, and how this curvature comes down and underneath is undercut a little bit around the top of the orange. So, sometimes it's helpful if you look at that, and if you really grab it hard, you can see that these tendons are coming up this way. And if you can imagine scooping these out a little bit deeper, and you're getting the same effect when you look at the ball and claw. So why don't we go ahead and finish this one up, and we'll do the same thing to the other side. Okay, good. The webs are done. What we need to do now is to form tubes as though they're grasping a hold of the ball. Let me get the orange and I'll show you what I mean. When I grab a hold of this, you look at the finger, you have 3 different cylinders. 1 cylinder here, 1 cylinder here, and 1 cylinder here. And we're going to try and reproduce that along our ball and claw here. You might even see that the shape of this leg is reflected in my wrist if I put my arm up straight. So we'll get rid of this orange now. We'll put it into the vise and we'll start to form those. What we need now is, again, the number 5, 10 millimeter. You want to check the grain direction. You might want to start off with a fairly small cut and see if your grain is going the correct way. If we go the opposite way, you might see that it starts to chip up a little bit. You get a little difference in the texture, and you can actually hear a little difference. So that's one little test if you're a little apprehensive as to whether the grain's going in the correct direction or not. And we just round these off. Now you don't want to take this down too far because you'll get the surface of the claw will get too close to the ball. So you just want to just knock off the edges so you get a nice round along here, both sides. Let's switch around and probably can do this lower claw with the same tool. You can bring this pretty close to the line if you need to, if you want. Eventually we'll be shaping this into a cone shape. Then I think we'll use a wider number 5 to get this upper area. We need the width in order to go across this entire knuckle here. You want to try and keep straight lines where the knuckles will start to develop. We will be able to adjust these in height a little bit later on. But first of all, what we need is just to round these off slightly. Right now what we'll do is jump down to the talon area. And what I'm going to try and do is form a cone shape here. So we want to take a couple of cuts from the side. And we want to bring this cone shape right into this diagonal line that we've drawn. Clean up the ball area and work right down to my line now. Probably switch tools to the smaller number 5 so that we can carve right down to that point. Now we have a nice cone shape. We'll go on to the next knuckle, or claw I should say. And I believe we're going to have to carve from this direction. Well, we'll use the smaller 5 first. Round those off. And use the small one to get the lower section here, just to start with. Switch around, get the upper section. The wider number 5. And again, we'll taper this to a cone shape. Work right into that diagonal line that we scribed. First lines that we scribed for our layout. Switch tools and we'll bring that taper right down into the ball. You can see that I don't have to remove very much wood. And all we're really doing is knocking off the edges to round off these claw parts. Change tools, do the upper section. And we'll change positions and go on to the back. That'll be the last of it. Probably just 1 or 2 strokes down the back. There, now we're finished roughing the claws. Now if we were carving 4 of these ball and claw feet, what we'd want to do is to try and locate the knuckles all in the same position. The way that we can do that is either carve 1 foot completely, or we can, if you have a model to refer to, we can refer to a model. Let's go on over and get the Philadelphia model here, and we can adjust the height of the claws off of this one. The way that we transfer the height of the knuckles is to do it with a compass. We just want to put a mark there, and one for the top. We want to do that on the size of each one of these now. Get the lower knuckle. The second knuckle. And the third knuckle. What this is for, again, is to so that we might be able to get these knuckles in the right position when we start to carve. I'm going to try to form the tubes in between these two lines. Okay. We'll put this one back. All right, what I'm going to do now is to try and carve a straight line from this line to this upper line, the lines that we marked with the compass. And I'm using a number 5 20mm gouge. This is going to establish our knuckle height. Okay, I'm going to need another tool here. This is a back bent gouge. The bevel is on the top, the cutting edge is on the bottom. I'm going to use that in through this ankle area here. Again, you can see that because of the shape of this tool, I'll be able to get into this area here. Okay, we'll go on to another surface here. Second claw. Again, we'll start with the 20mm number 5. Go between the two lines to get the proper knuckle height. And we'll do this again for the other side. So it is somewhat repetitive. Have a little bit of chattering there, but it's leaving a smooth surface, so we don't have to worry too much. Okay, good. This is looking good. Okay, we'll go on to the back and we'll put a little bit of a dip in there in order to form a tendon shape. Spin around to the other side here. Take a little bit of meat out of here. You have to go in from 2 different directions. And this will give us pretty much the overall shape of what things will be. From here, I might want to touch up my tools and start refining the whole process. I think that's about right for now. Let's take a look at it. Generally overall, looks pretty good. We have the heights established, the cone shapes for the talons, nice tubes coming down, a bit broad, but what we'll do is we'll narrow those down as we start to refine things. Probably what we'll need to do next is to work in the web area and on the ball a little bit more, do a little bit more roughing on that. We want this web to probably flow from this vertical line up around a little bit higher and end back at the top of this knuckle. So we'll just have to scoop this up quite a ways. The height of the ball in the front is a little bit too high in comparison to the height in the back. So if we drop that ball down, it'll do 2 things for us. It'll give us a little more height in through the center of this claw, so we will be able to get the correct height of that. And also it'll line it up with this back ball. The back's looking pretty good. I don't think we'll have to do any more with that. So why don't we go back to the clamp and we'll start to work on the web a little bit. Take this number 5 20mm again. I'm going to lower the top top of the ball. Reshape the ball here a little bit. Starting to get a little bit more height in my center claw now also. I need my mallet. I drive my chisel right into the web area. Now I'm going to need another tool here. I don't have one that I need, so this is the one. This is number 7. We use that right in the web area here. It's got a little bit more of a sweep than the 5 and a little less than the 8 or the 9. Okay, this is probably a good comparison for you. If we look at the height of this ball compared to that ball, this side of the ball, it's much lower. And the thickness of this web is thicker now because we've lowered the ball. You can see that's quite thin here, so what we need to do is try and match up this left-hand side with the right-hand side. We got a pretty nice curve in here. I don't think we'll have to do too much more work to that. What we need to do now is to match up this side with that side. Use our number 7 again up at the web area here. Make another relief cut with the number 5. Go back at it with the 7 again. Okay, I think we still have to move that web up a little bit further. Sometimes if instead of taking it out, I might bend down like so and get a look at it. Do a little more work on the top of the ball here. Get it somewhat to the shape of the other one. Okay, I need to get another tool here. I'd like you to just look at the difference between the two of these. Actually, there isn't much. This is a number 3, and this is a number 5. But if we put them together, you'll see that they're pretty much the same sweep. What's nice about the narrow one is I'll be able to get into this web area a little bit easier. Otherwise, the corners of the number 5 start to dig in on either side, but with the narrow one, they won't. Another thing we might want to look at is just another straight gouge. You'll notice that this one is sharpened straight across, and these other two have actually been sharpened with a curve on the end of it. That doesn't have anything to do with the sweep. That's just the way that I had sharpened these, just to relieve the edges. The reason for that is it'll fit into any curved area, like the curve of this web matches the curve of the end of the tool. Okay, what I think we need to do is take a look at this now. What I'm looking for is the height of the ball on each side to make sure they're the same, and somewhat the curvature of the ball. The main difference that I see right now is this part of the ball in through here is sharper than this one. This one's a bit flatter. It might be a good idea just to fasten this in the vise as it is and work back and forth on each side. But I'll use the number 5, the 20 millimeter, and try to take some of the sharpness out of here now. Now, if this was a Newport ball and claw foot, what I'd do is I'd cut these webs back a little bit further, and then I'd approach this from all 4 sides, and I'd try to drive this tool right through into the center, taking a cut from right on top of the ball and then one a little bit higher up, back and forth on all 4 sides. That way I'd develop that undercutting that you see in the Newport piece. So let me just clean up a little bit more up around the top area here. This tool feels as though it's getting a little bit dull, so I think I'm going to touch it up a little bit. I'll save that for later. I have a couple of bench stones here. We're going to need some oil, slipstone, and a strop. All right, you saw me slam this down on the bench. I have 4 nails here. That's to prevent the box from shifting around. I have 2 bench stones here. One's an India combination stone. It's a combination stone because it has a carborundum rough stone on the bottom side, and the India is on the top side. This is the finer of the stones. I have a hard Arkansas, which is a black surgical stone. I use this very, very seldom, just for some really fussy work. Then I have a slipstone, which is also a fine India stone. It has 2 rounded edges, one a bit broader than the other. This one would be used for flat sweeps. This one would be used for deep sweeps. And I have a little piece of leather here that is charged with rouge. Actually, I'm quite fortunate. My wife's a jeweler, so I have a lifetime supply of it. When we go to sharpen this or just touch it up, if I was grinding the tool on the grinder to start with, what I would do is I'd go directly to the coarse stone and I'd remove any of the grinding marks from the back, on the back bevel with the rough stone. But since I'm just touching this up with the fine stone, I just want to spread my oil thinly over the top. What's nice about mineral oil is it's healthy. You don't have to worry about the absorption through your skin or anything like that. And it's a pretty nice lubricant. What I want to do is just roll this tool across the top of the stone. And what will happen is a burr will form on the inside, and I'll be able to feel that. You notice the low level of the tool also. If I start to hone this up high like this, this is the angle in which I'd have to carve at. And it would make it very difficult. So you want to keep your angle pretty low. That's feeling pretty good. What I want to do is take the slipstone. I'm going to put oil on this broad curve because I have a fairly flat sweep for a chisel. And when I go to hone this, what I do is instead of holding the stone flat on the inside of the chisel, what I do is elevate it slightly, about 15 degrees. What that does is put a slight bevel on the inside edge of the tool. And if you know anything about planes, a plane has a chip breaker. And as the shaving comes through the throat, it turns it and makes it curl. Actually, this little bevel on the inside of this tool does the same thing. So as I'm carving, as the shaving comes off, it turns the shaving. Okay, let me finish touching this up and then we can give it a little test and see how it's cutting. what happens is when I hone the inside, it turns the burr back to the opposite side, so you have to work the burr back and forth until you remove it from both sides. Okay, that feels just about right. Why don't I clean this off? Now what I would like to do is strop this tool. I told you I have rouge on here, which is a combination of wax and abrasive. I've rubbed that on the surface of the leather. Now this leather will give a little bit when I press the tool onto it, but what I want to do is start on this beveled edge, and I want it approximately at the same bevel that's ground on there. And I just want to draw it back. So this is really an abrasive action that's taking place on the back bevel of this tool. We also want to do the inside surface. And we go about doing the inside surface. If you have a fairly flat tool, you might want to take a curved surface that's fairly flat and bend your leather around it, and then pull the tool towards you, lifting up each time or at each stroke. And you want to make sure you get across the whole surface of that. Now that'll put a nice smooth edge on there, and the abrasive action will actually sharpen it up a little bit more. Clean this off a little bit before so we don't get rouge all over the claws here. Ooh, that's much nicer. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and work on these webs. I'm going to work at a little bit more rapid pace here. See if I can get some of this out of the way. Since we had a couple of lines across here where the knuckles are going to be positioned, what I'm trying to do is bring a sharp point right down to those lines, those scribe lines that we had put on there with the compass. And then we want to put a nice gentle arc in between the two of them. Nothing more than a few 30-seconds of an inch, but it gives it a nice sweep up towards the sharp knuckle. And that's what we, you know, if we're carving a Philadelphia ball and claw foot, that's the regional characteristic that we have to look for, is those sharp knuckles. And we'll get some little bit of curve up at the top here. Okay, I'm going to start to shape the talons here. What you do is set this in with a straight chisel to start with. Just get a little bit of relief, go straight down on the sides. Do the same on this side. Might go in a little bit deeper, just to form some type of a cuticle. I'm going to make sure your piece is fastened in the vise or the clamp well here. So you don't want to, when you exert cross pressure, you don't want to be pushing it out. Okay, we want to take a about a number 7 here and cut down straight in towards the nail. Kind of make it, if I use a gouge like this, it makes a little bulbous towards the bottom. I want to try to remove as many facets that's created from the carving tool. That way you wouldn't have to do any sanding at all if necessary, and it gives it a little texture. All 3 of these claws are done pretty much the same. What I do first of all is develop the cylinders, get some curves into the cylinders in between the knuckle places, the knuckle heights, and then you can start off with a straight gouge and go in towards the center and in towards the center. Then you'll need to use your back bend. Get that to the correct height. Now when I try to make these sharp knuckles, what you necessarily have to do is to put position your tool in a straight line that goes across, and swoop down towards the center so that you get a nice flowing curve. You really don't need much of a curve at all on that. If I put a straight edge on there, you'll see that it probably goes down what, a 3/16 or 3/32 of an inch or so. Not very much at all, so it's a very subtle curve, but the sharpness takes place at the knuckles. So when we try to form the knuckles, we try to get the line that we want across them and start off in one point and bring that sweeping line in. Sweep your tool in. There's a grain direction change here, so we go from the other side. There's also another one in through here. The back bend comes in pretty handy with this. Okay, this back claw differs from all the other claws mainly because it only has one knuckle right down at the base here, and it has the one talon. The talon is really the same as all the three others, but we have a long tendon that comes down through here, and we have to make that narrow enough and give it enough curve in there that this curve in through the back actually gives a little bit of a bend into the let's just take a look at it for a second here. If we look at it from the side view or from the back view, you can see I need to narrow this a little bit more in through here to give it a little bit more slender look. I got the undercutting that takes place in the webbing in the back. But if we look at it from the side, if I take a little bit more out from this area here and cut this in a little bit deeper, what that'll do is give a little bit more of a turn to the back side of the ankle, and it'll actually make the leg look a bit more curved in the back. So why don't I do that, and then I'll let you see it again, and we'll probably see quite a difference when we look at it. Let's see, I think I'll try this one. Now I'm finally getting the shape that I was looking for. Okay. Alrighty. If you notice right in here, we have a low spot. Usually whenever you do any carving, you always want to go downhill into the low spot. So you'll see my body change in direction here. I'll go down to the low spot with my carving, right into the center, and then I'll have to switch around. And what I have to do in here is try to make a cut approximately the same depth that I had made from the opposite direction in order to get a nice smooth transition. Otherwise, you get an up and down type of a cut. You have a cut deeper than a cut on this side. You have a cut deeper than a cut on that side. That's exactly what happens. So you have to try and be a little bit finicky right down in this little spot here. That's why I keep shifting back and forth. And you have to just have a real light touch to hit the same plane from both directions. Now we're developing quite the S-curve that we were trying to achieve before. Now you can see we have a nice S-shaped curve on the back. It really gives a turn to that ankle at the back. We also have another S-curve looking at it from the back where this tendon narrows and widens out into the knuckle. The way that I do that is I make a cut with my carving tool this way and then this way. So you get this S shape also on both sides. I'll actually do a little work on that so I can get the correct shape. It's a little out of whack. It's a little bit more bulbous on one side than the other. All right, now I'm going to work on down into the talon area. a couple of cuts in straight this way, first of all. And I need a little bit of a ridge on the back here, going down into the talon. And need to get rid of this ridge in through here. Sometimes this is a little trickier. You can go right around it with a straight chisel. And clean up some of this raggedness where the talon meets the ball. And finish this off to a nice cone shape. Probably need a little bit narrower chisel to do that. Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit better. Now, I have to round this off just slightly along the sides here. But basically, I'm pretty much through. Just the next thing that we really want to do is take a good hard look at this. Start comparing one claw to the other. Since we have two that are the same, they should look the same. Yeah, let's take a look now. Okay, basically it's looking pretty well. This may look a little bit thick compared to the model that we have. This one's a bit narrower. That one looks pretty good. I'd work on these a little bit to make sure those are nice and smooth and have a nice curvature to them like they're supposed to have, coming up to a nice fine ridge at each one of the knuckles. I think what I'm going to do is try and narrow this thicker claw on this side here. We need to bring that down a little bit, so we'll be a little bit fussy with that now. Okay, that looks about the same width now. So I think what I'll try and do is straighten out the circle on the bottom of this ball. Got a couple of flat spots, or sharp spots I should say. I think I'll try this number 3, which is a little flatter. I can take some of that. That doesn't look too bad. A little bit better than it was. I just want to clean up the webs here a little bit. Have to do a little work on the ball also. Last little bit here. Yeah, that's done. Looks much nicer now. Flows up into the ankle, and I've cleaned up around the ball. Now I want to do this last surface here. Get rid of a little of this few of these tool marks here. It's a little bit ragged. I need to touch this up a bit. Yeah. That surface is looking pretty nice. Okay. I think we need to do a little bit more with this webbing through here. Just a touch. Maybe make it a bit deeper to match the other side. Yeah, a scoop or two should do it. I'll have to do that again over here. Be able to touch the rest of that up when we go into shaping the leg. Okay, I think this looks pretty good. Not too bad. I think we're about at the end here. I may do a little bit of carving, you know, touch it up a little bit more, but I think it's pretty well done. I think what we should do right now is go ahead on to the shaping of the leg. Okay, let me clean off the bench. All right. Now what we need to do, we have to do a layout for the shaping of the leg. What I'm going to do is use my center finger here and run it up along this vertical line to, what I want to do is put the pencil right in the center of the ankle, and I want to draw a vertical line right up along the inside edge, using my finger right along that inside edge. I want to do that on all four surfaces. Now you see I keep using the edge that's to my right. That's my right. Now what we do is we turn it end for end, and we do the same thing, using that surface to my right. Just bring it right up along there, and up the back, again up along the front edge here, to the front of the leg. And that's complete. Now what we need to do is take the distance between one of these lines in the edge and find the center of that and draw a line, vertical line, up each one of these. All right, we'll spin it around and do the same thing. This may look a bit confusing to you if you've never seen it done before, but these lines are very helpful when we start to shape. We can remove stock pretty rapidly without really taking too much away. Okay, what I need to do is I want to rasp between this line and this line. Okay, we're ready to file now. Rasp. We grab this, you want to grab it on the tip and at the handle. You want to take as long a strokes as possible. That way you can remove quite a bit of wood at one time. So. You can see how fast that goes. I'm already down to my two lines. What I've done is I've created a 45-degree line off of these two surfaces. I want to do that, bring it right up to the knee. We don't want it to touch the post block though, and we want to just blend it down into this tendon portion. Need a little bit lighter touch down at the end. Okay, that surface is done. Why don't we shift to our next surface. When we go to rasp this time, what we need to be careful of is not to come up and touch this point here. We want it to taper from 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch below this point here. And then we want that 45-degree line to carry all the way down into the ankle. Okay, that surface is done. Okay, I want to do the same that I did to that other inside edge. Be careful of this corner up in here. Use the round side of the file first, and then the flat side to do this straight. Just work down to those 2 lines that I marked. Okay, the final surface will be the inside surface here. If I position it with the ball and claw foot down this end, I'll be working downhill so that I really won't be going against the grain here. It really looks as though it chews it up, but it chews it up even more if we go the opposite way. I have to use a little bit lighter touch here because the leg isn't being held that well into the clamp. Okay, I guess we're about complete there. Let me show you what I've done so far. I'll make a little sketch here for you. When I did the rasping on this leg, I've turned the cross section at the ankle into a regular octagon. A little difficult drawing on this sawdust, but. And what happened in the cross section just below the knee turned into a irregular octagon. These 45-degree lines that I've drawn indicate the rasp marks. Now what I'm going to do in my next step is I'm going to, at the ankle, round the square into an actual circle. So I'll start at the center line and rasp around, just touch the center diagonal line and carry that around to the center line. So eventually what I'll be doing is turning the ankle into a complete circle, like so. But below the knee here, what's going to happen is I'm going to round it off approximately the same amount, but as you can see, we're ending up with a square with rounded corners. You can see the flat through here would be the distance between these 2 lines on the leg. Okay, we'll file the roundness on this and come down to what would have been the center line at the ankle. Very light touch with the rasp this time. Alter this in the clamp just slightly so we can get the other surface. Now let me just say a little bit about the knee here. Some people prefer to widen this out a little bit. It takes a little bit of the sharpness off of the knee. It's all right to do that. What you have to just be careful of is to make it symmetrical so it is nice and smooth transition on both sides. Now let's go on to the last surface, and that'll pretty much finish up the rasping. Okay, that completes the rasping. Now what you see is you have a circle here and a square with rounded off corners up by the knee area. So why don't we put this back in the clamp and we'll go ahead and start filing. Sometimes if you use your file, just running it horizontally like so, you don't get quite as many file marks. Again, you don't want to touch this point up here. You just want to get a nice smooth transition where it comes from nothing and spreads out down into the curve. That looks pretty good. We'll change our surface here. Okay, I want to try and get down in through this tendon area now. Smooth that up slightly. Finish up down the ankle here. Okay, I guess we're about done with the filing now. Looks pretty nice. We have a nice little round at the ankle and nice curve coming up. Not too many file marks left in there to scrape out. So why don't we go ahead and scrape this and be on our way. This is a card scraper. It's just a piece of metal that has a burr that's turned over on the edge. That burr actually creates a little bit of a shaving when we either draw it towards us, or it can be pushed either direction, depending on where you might be. You might want to flip around and get down into the ankle area here with just a corner. Main thing though is just to remove file marks. That way you don't have to do too much sanding. Get up towards the knee here. This whole area up in here will be finished up when the transition pieces are applied. So you don't have to worry too much about this area right at this point. If you were making a footstool, once it was assembled, that's when you do the work on this upper area. But the more file marks you get out with the scraper, the less you have to sand. There, I think that's probably about enough. You get the idea of what I have to do. I'm not going to sand this. As you can see, it looks pretty good. I've removed all the file marks here. Needs more scraping on the back, of course, but you know what a sanded one looks like anyway. Remember this one? Now I think I'd like to treat myself to a little bit of a little joy here. Little oil varnish. All you woodworkers out there know what I'm talking about here. The joy of putting the first coat on. Of course, I wouldn't do this unless I finished a piece of furniture, but after going through all this effort, I think I earned the treat. Whew. Certainly looks nice, doesn't it? I should say that I worked on many of these before I really had any feel for what I was doing. It's pretty humorous, actually. The first ones that I ever carved, they look like they have arthritis. But all I can say is that if you enjoy working with wood and carving or doing anything like that, just to keep at it, and the rewards will come. It was nice spending a little time with you people.
Here are scenes from the Taunton Press video workshops featuring fellow enthusiasts. Dovetail a drawer and making mortise and tenon joints with Frank Klaus. Repairing furniture and refinishing furniture with Bob Flexner. Radial arm saw joinery with Curtis Erpelding. Bowl turning with Dell Stubbs, and also turning wood with Richard Raffin. A third tape with Klaus, wood finishing. Carving, techniques and projects with Sam Bush and Mac Headley. Chip carving with Wayne Barton. Router jigs and techniques with Bernie Moss and Michael Fortune. Making kitchen cabinets with Paul Levine. Small shop tips and techniques with Jim Cummins. And the three-part series, tiling floors, tiling walls, and tiling countertops with Michael Byrne.